Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, ATD Painting, and Performance Food Group. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, senior care at its best with a family atmosphere. They specialize in making their facilities as close to a home living experience as possible. Not only that, there are no move-in fees and there are no visitation restrictions. They are located near I-635 in Marsh Lane in Dallas, right near Carrollton. For more information, you can call 469-400-7650. That is Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Justin Thomas and Devin Hassan. On today's podcast, we are going to recap the third round of the high school football playoffs, including an up and down weekend for Frisco ISD and Celina, nearly calling its shot and living to tell about it. But first, let's talk some 6A action, gentlemen. And I guess Justin, let's go right to a fun game that you had, an expected shootout between Hebron and Haltom, one with several different layers to it that we can discuss. As far as just the game itself, just talk a bit about what were some takeaways from this game in the Hawks. I guess a season-ending 41-30 loss to Haltom.
41-30 to Haltom out there at Apogee Stadium in Denton. Good football game, entertaining game. The Hawks season comes to an end in the third round. It was their third time in the third round. Then Hebron got out to a great start. They led for most of the first half. They scored the first two touchdowns of the game. There was plenty of offense, but I really think the Haltom defense really picked things up in the second half, and I think that was kind of the turning point. Hebron kind of had its way on the ground in the first half, but Haltom slowed them down in the second half and then just picked up their running game themselves, especially quarterback Michael Black. So that's kind of what it came down to. Like I said, Hebron got out to a great start. Haltom fumbled their exchange on a little read play on the first play, and Hebron fell on it, scored a touchdown, forced a punt, come right back down, score another touchdown. Both of them Carson Harris touchdown runs. So I'm thinking, here's the Richardson-Pierce game again. Two touchdowns right off the bat. But Haltom kind of settled in from there. They were able to get to 16-13, and then a couple turnovers kind of hurt Hebron. So. They throw an interception, Haltom comes back, scores a touchdown, so they have their first lead. So Hebron's kind of looking to answer right before the half, and they kind of throw this route down the sideline for Trejan Bridges, and he totally got held up, but there was no passing. I don't know if he would have been able to catch the ball, but it certainly, I don't think if they wouldn't have held him up, I don't think it would have been an interception. So it ended up being an interception, so Haltom goes to the lead with the half with the lead, up by 4. Hebron comes right out second half, get a couple nice runs from Isaiah Broadway, and then they get Trejan Bridges on a slant, and he just takes it to the house, 52 yards. Scores the touchdown. Hebron's back in front, and I'm sure, as a lot of people saw. Yeah, this is what I wanted to talk most about with this game. The Oklahoma commit goes with the horns down, and apparently that's taunting. They're not playing the Longhorns, although somebody did mention that
the Buffaloes.
The Buffaloes do have the Texas.
That was not the intent, I'm guessing.
Somebody did mention that Haltom does use the Texas fight song, but I'm sure he just heard that Oklahoma had just beaten that game. He's beaten Texas. I think that game ended probably right around halftime of the Hebron game. I'm sure he heard at halftime that Oklahoma had won. Scores a touchdown, gives the horns down. There's nobody around him. He's not he's
gonna run up into some Haltom player's face.
He's not taunting anyone, and they flag him for 15 yards. So that comes on the kickoff. So Haltom gets the kickoff. They end up starting their possession at the Hebron 47. Takes them 4 plays, they score. So they take the lead back right after that. Definitely a big momentum and field position changer, that penalty. Then Hebron comes back. They have a nice drive. They have I think it was a holding penalty that put them in a first and long situation. They end up having a 13-play drive, but they have to punt. And Haltom gets the ball at the 10, and then Michael Black runs 90 yards for a touchdown to put them up double figures. And that was essentially it. Yeah.
And Michael Black is 4,000 yards this season, 48 touchdowns.
Yeah, he had 180 rushing yards and I think 200 passing yards. So he's pretty awesome.
A difference maker right there.
What are your impressions on Haltom? I mean, a Haltom team that I'm not sure you envisioned that you'd be covering a Haltom game at the start of the season.
Yeah, I know.
And I mean, they've just this dream run of Haltom just keeps on rolling, and offensively, that is statistically as good an offense as there has been in the area. Did they look the part? Or?
Yeah, especially Michael Black. He definitely looks the part, and it all centers around him. And their defense, as I said, that turnover right at the start put their defense in a bad spot. But their defense, as the game progressed, seemed to get better and better. So I was pretty impressed with Haltom, but I don't know that I think they're going to win again.
I'm still floored by this Trejan Bridges thing.
Yeah,
and that went viral too. The video of that went viral, and I mean, Devin, you're a Texas alum. I'm an OU alum, so we can put down our swords and whatnot. But nevertheless,
it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm sorry.
It is without question the most idiotic story like in college sports this year. The horns down fiasco leading up to Saturday's rematch between OU and Texas, and just to see that bleed over into the high school ranks in if there was any sort of, first off, I don't believe there's any sort of malicious intent behind that gesture to begin with. It's two rival schools, and again, I don't know. The fact that that became as much of a story as it did was just astonishing.
And again, as ridiculous as a Texas grad, I think it's ridiculous that it's even an issue.
Yeah, I know.
But if they came out early in the week for the Big 12 championship and said, okay, even though it is, I'm not going to get into it, we're going to penalize you if you do it. At least they knew ahead of time, and the Oklahoma coaches going to say, look, as ridiculous as it is, just don't do it because we don't want to lose 15 yards. But to have that trickle down to a high school game, in which neither of these
like I said, it's not like they're playing the Longhorns. It's not like he scored and he went right up in some dude's face and was just
found a Texas commit to go.
The guy's in the end zone. He's an Oklahoma commit. They just knocked off Texas. Probably, obviously now it is to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, it was a huge win for them.
He put a horns down, and there was nobody around him, and that was ridiculous.
Yeah, because if you're going to call it for taunting, where do you draw the line between what constitutes a touchdown celebration and what constitutes taunting? Because everything is a show of something and whatnot. I don't know. I was floored when I saw that tweet began to circulate. Be better, officials. Be better than that. All right, Devin. Let's turn our attention to your game, Mesquite Horn. It looked like for a second that they might have some more magic in the works with the job that they played Spring Westfield in the first half. Just kind of, what was your kind of read on that game and how the Jaguars were able to hang tough early, but eventually kind of got away from them late?
Horn did everything that they pulled out all the stops, and they also had the breaks go their way for 3 quarters. I mean, Westfield turned the ball over 3 times. They had a big muffed punt early when Westfield jumped out on top. They were up 14-3, and then they muffed a punt. They put it on the ground again, and Horn was able to capitalize. Jermaine Gibbons hits Cameron Jackson on a 14-yard touchdown pass. Richard Garcia, their excellent field goal kicker, kicks 3 field goals. But it's field goals, and you even got a sense then that even though they were up 16-14. They had a couple of onside kicks they recovered. I mean, they played to win, and they knew they had to catch a couple breaks. But you got a feeling when they had to settle for field goals that might come back and bite them later on. They're able to, grab that 16-14 lead just before halftime. Stays that way till the 4th quarter, but then Spring Westfield is able to kind of get their ground game going. They take the lead early in the 4th quarter, and then Horn did what it could not afford to do. They turned the ball over. Twice in that 4th quarter. It leads to, Westfield scored 2 touchdowns in about a 2-minute span early in the 4th quarter to kind of take control of 29-16. Horn kind of had to press. They couldn't get their ground game going all night long. Jermaine Gibbons, who's been so great on the ground, Asias Taylor, Nikausi Emery, that group that had kind of spearheaded this 5-game winning streak heading into the playoffs, just couldn't get it going. And granted, Westfield has a very good defense, a very good team, and they just kind of wore them down. Horn did get the breaks that they needed, and maybe if 1 or 2 of those field goals turns into touchdowns, it's a little bit different story. But just too much Westfield at the end.
What do you think the legacy of this Horn team will be, and just the season they had is as bizarre a season as that program has ever had, I'd say. I mean, but at the end of the day, to go 3 rounds deep, given what they had to battle through early in the season, what do you think will be the legacy of this Horn team?
Yeah, I think they lived up to their potential. I mean, no one foresaw saw the 0-7 start. They knew it was going to be difficult against that schedule. But I think when you looked at this team beforehand, you looked at it as, hey, this is a team that could contend for the district title. This is a team that should be in the playoffs, and this is a team that has the talent to go 3 rounds deep. And so, despite the record, and that's what a lot of people have pointed to, all during the course of the year, I think this is a team that met its expectation, that was worthy of being 3 rounds deep. It wasn't some Cinderella run where they had to make some miraculous Hail Mary to escape, or their opponent has to turn the ball over 5 times to give them a chance. This is a team that deserved to be in the 3rd round. They proved it. They played right with Spring Westfield. Didn't go their way on Friday, but it's a tremendous season for Horn.
You're telling me the finish against Temple wasn't the work of storybooks, or?
Oh, it was. It was a dramatic ending. I mean, they scored with 11 seconds left, but it was to win 45-38. I mean, but it wasn't as if they had to. They didn't need 3 onside kicks and miracle here, miracle there. I mean, they flat out beat Temple. It just in dramatic fashion, but they flat out beat them.
Let's see. Let's close out the first half of this podcast with a look at my game. I was out in Waco, the first of 2 weekends that I will be spending in Waco. Yeah, to see Allen. Ironically enough, both times. Allen on Saturday, they continue to march on. They were able to avenge their last loss all the way back in December of 2016, almost 2 years to the day, 9 days short of the 2-year anniversary of their state semifinal loss to the Woodlands. Allen is able to exact a measure of revenge. You'll never be able to ultimately erase the sting of that semifinal loss 2 years ago, but Allen does get a measure of redemption with a 31-24 victory in a game that I think at the very least at the outset was maybe a bit closer than at least prognosticators might have envisioned coming in. One thing about the Woodlands that really impressed me was they I think in order to be able to hang with Allen and to potentially even beat Allen, you have to be able to match them up front, because Allen has so much size, so much depth, so much talent in the trenches, and it felt like, at least from the vantage point up in the press box, that the Woodlands did as good a job of that of any team that I've seen this season, and that was kind of the book on them coming in. The Woodlands has perennially been very strong up front, and that was the first thing that that Coach Gamble noted when just kind of breaking down what the Woodlands brought to the table earlier in the week, was just how strong they were going to be at the line of scrimmage. And Allen, just little sequences like if Allen got near the goal line, first off, obviously everybody knows that Allen has size up front, but when you see Allen bust out its jumbo package near the goal line, it is a sight to see. It is, you credit to, it looks like a play that they should be able to get however many yards they need with just as much size as they have, all just jumbled at the line of scrimmage like that. But there were moments where Allen had, they got the ball down to the 6-yard line and they scored eventually, but it took them 4 plays to do so. The Woodlands offered up a bit more resistance, in situations that I've seen a lot of other opponents just kind of crater against Allen. And ultimately, this one just kind of boiled down to Allen just making good on some opportunities that were set up on defense and special teams early in the game. I believe it was Keith Johnson. He blocked a punt on the Woodlands opening drive that set up Allen just outside the red zone. They turned that into a field goal, and then at the end of the 3rd quarter, KJ Willie has an interception that he takes down to the 6, and Allen's able to convert that into a touchdown. And just those those miscues in those short fields that when you give Allen those kind of opportunities, it's death. The margin for error is so slim against a team that strong. And this was a game that Allen definitely had to. The second straight week they've had to grind one out late. They were. That's good for Allen. It's good for Allen to have to go through the emotional rigors of being involved in close 4th quarter games. It's going to happen at some juncture in the playoffs, and between this and the Rockwall game, putting teams that put Allen in situations that they haven't been in at all during the regular season. So, and they were able to, whereas last week it was the offense that was able to, ice the win against Rockwall. On Saturday, the defense was able to force a late turnover on downs to preserve that 7-point victory, albeit, the Woodlands having a bit of a brain fart on a wide open drop on 4th down that would have.
And everybody kind of had already written Allen into at least the state semifinals. Yeah. Just how dominant they've been over the course of the regular season. Is this a sign that maybe Allen's not as good as people think, or is this just a matter of teams being able to rise to the occasion and give them a good challenge?
I think every matchup, you kind of treat it, as its own special entity. Like, not every offense has the ability to do what Rockwall can do. Not every offense has a player as transcendent as Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then, like I said, that was my first time seeing the Woodlands, so I have no real, preconception for what they had been doing prior to that game, if that was a pretty traditional performance from them from a quality of play standpoint. But I do know that, again, at least what they have in the trenches, like, that's enough most times to give you at least a fighting chance if you can at the very least play Allen to a draw in the offensive and defensive lines. I was just impressed also with just the Woodlands and their, just the defense and the job they did tackling. Allen didn't have too many big plays if there were any. Selden Manning had a big 64-yard touchdown run on Allen's first play of the third quarter, and then Theo Weiss had he had a big day receiving. He had 6 catches for 113 yards, and his last 3 receptions all went for at least 20 yards, including a 42-yarder that definitely got some traction on social media that helped set up a touchdown by Allen to end the half. It was a game
I enjoyed his tweet responding to your video of that, right? I believe he said right after the overrated chant.
Oh, so the Woodlands crowd getting throwing some shade Theo's way. That's a dangerous game to play.
Hey, I don't chant overrated if you can't keep a guy under 100 receiving yards.
That's a dangerous game to play, Woodlands. At the same time, said it was a game that, like, Allen was able to get a 2-score lead, early in the third quarter, and they just kind of, the Woodlands were able to stay at least within arm's length. It never really felt like a game that Allen was ever in danger of losing, just because of, the Woodlands had a couple chunk plays, that helped comprise the bulk of their yardage, but just, I don't know, Allen's defense is just, I don't know, just a reassurance of Allen's defense just being too strong in the end. But yeah, like I say, I don't know how the Woodlands compares to what Midway has or what Duncanville has. It's just there's little bits and pieces with these matchups that.
You're not gonna have to worry about Duncanville.
Notice how he said Duncanville, not Southlake.
Yeah, he's not gonna. We don't have to worry about that.
No, Duncanville's given up 54 points all season long.
Yeah. It's so I guess I don't know. On the one hand, like, I guess because I just don't overreact when I see a team like Allen involved in close games. Like, it's going to happen eventually. Nobody just waltzes. Even when they had Kyler Murray, they didn't just waltz their way to a state title any of those 3 years.
Yeah, but it's just I guess that's just what Allen's become, and we hold him to a certain standard.
No, you just expect them to go out and beat everybody by 40.
Well, you broke down a couple weeks ago how their average margin of victory in the second round was 14 points.
Yeah, 14 points.
And that was the closest of any round. So it's not fair to them, but just their dominance over the last decade, you just expect them to go out there and win by 3-4 touchdowns. And so when they do get challenged, it's just natural reaction is to say, hey, maybe this team isn't as strong as maybe some of those Allen teams in the past.
I've said for we like to laud Texas high school football as being the best in the country because of its depth. So I don't think any of us should be surprised when that depth reveals itself and there's other good teams that are capable of the Woodlands has enough tradition that I know it was kind of an awkward year for them because of the transition at head coach, and they had an 0-2 start, but they rounded into form late. So who knows? It might be a harbinger of things to come. Maybe Waco Midway gives them a heck of a game. Midway, which Midway, they were raced a 24-0 deficit at the half and won 28-27. So certainly a measure of resilience that should definitely have Allen on its toes heading into Friday's game. But yeah, I guess I was maybe initially surprised that it was a 7-point game, but just considering what the Woodlands was able to do and their stylistic makeup, I guess it wasn't that surprising in hindsight, since it just seemed like a good matchup for them. And that is a look at the very least of the on the 6A portion of our third round docket. We've got some 5A action on the way, but first, got to shine that student athlete spotlight for this. Speaking of Allen, we headed out to Allen on Monday to talk with their standout offensive lineman EJ Ndoma-Ogar about Allen's another lengthy playoff run for the Eagles and their pursuit of another state championship. And we will see what EJ had to say after a word from the sponsor. Let's take a quick break to talk about ATD Painting. Whether it's painting, staining, carpentry, residential, commercial, interior, or exterior, ATD Painting has you covered. They have 4 locations in the Metroplex, including Plano and Louisville. You can call 972-694-8888 for more information, or you can visit their website at atdpainting.com. That is ATD Painting. Check it out to see just how affordable professional painting can be. And now, let's get back to the podcast. We are out here at Allen High School talking with EJ Ndoma-Ogar, a standout offensive lineman for the reigning Class 6A Division I state champion Allen Eagles. Allen, once again, immersed in another long playoff run. So EJ, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy week to chat with us today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
So, hey, congratulations on the win on Saturday. A hard-fought win over the Woodlands for Allen. You guys are now bound for the state quarterfinals for the 7th consecutive year. What has just the mood been like around the program as of late as you guys are immersed in yet another deep playoff run?
I mean, we're just hungry. I mean, it was kind of a key point for us last week. You know, we made it a mission to get after the Woodlands, and you know, we're not stopping there. You know, we're trying to get to that state, and you know, we're just not stopping. I mean, right now, I mean, we're not getting too comfortable. We're just like we still got 3 more games ahead of us, so that's kind of how it's been.
That was as a competitor these last couple weeks of you definitely had to grind out every last bit of these 2 victories over Rockwall and then on Saturday against the Woodlands. After just kind of taking care of these games with ease during the regular season, just what has it been like? Kind of the mental rigors of going through these games that are coming right down to the wire as of late.
I mean, like we just have to. I think we just have to come together more. I think that's kind of how it goes. I mean, we just during adversity, because we've been through a lot of it. I think just since it's really like we've been through a lot of close games. We haven't been through any close ones in the regular season. I mean, but now in the just when the playoffs, you know, we gotta start focusing. They're better teams, better. I mean, just better players, better athletes, and you know, since Rockwall's close, all those Woodlands were close. I think just the fact that we know we know what we're getting into. So yeah.
Now the Woodlands, like I said, they made you guys work for every last bit of that victory on Saturday. Just what were your thoughts on their defensive line and just kind of what they showed y'all on Saturday?
Their defensive line was very physical. I mean, they were well sized. I think they made us grind a little bit harder than usual. I mean, they were just a good team overall, like on all cylinders. Their offense was really up tempo. Their defense was just hustling to the ball. Like they weren't stopping. You know, they gave us some challenges, but we managed to take those over. So yeah.
How much of a motivating factor was it to avenge the loss 2 years ago? Because you were one of the few players that was on that team back in 2016. Just talk a bit about how much of a motivator that was.
Well, I think most people before the game didn't understand how big this game was for the seniors. They were just like, you know, oh, so Woodlands playoff, we got to win. But to me, that was huge because 2 years ago, it didn't feel good to go through that, and people just, you know, they're kind of blowing past it, but I didn't want to. I wanted to make it a mission. I told my offensive lineman, I said, let's make it a mission to beat the Woodlands, plain and simple. And I was just like, you know, and I guess we all stuck by it. Everybody stuck by it, not just the offensive line, but everybody stuck by it.
Now you've been on varsity for quite some time as part of an offensive line that traditionally has been. I mean, there's a lot of storied history that comes with Allen's offensive line. A lot of standout college players, even pros that have passed through this program in that offensive line. Just what does it mean to you to be just be a part of that lineage and that tradition that comes with playing on the offensive line here at Allen? It's
great. I mean, just knowing that all these potential NFL players, they all been through this. And, you know, it's just great that I get to be a part of it. With I get to lead the team, you know, and it's just a blessing. So yeah.
Have you always played guard during your time as a lineman, or?
No, I played tackle last year. I played right tackle last year, but then they decided, since I like to maul people, put me on the interior, so I kind of stuck by that. So yeah.
What was it like, kind of making that transition from tackle to guard? Just how different are the two positions?
I mean, from the tackle standpoint, I had to be more patient. But at guard, you know, I just had to. I like playing guard. I like being on the interior because just like, I mean, I'm just a road grader, so I just like to maul people. So I mean, it's just that's just kind of my thing, being on the interior side of the offensive line. But right tackle was good for me because it also taught me some good technique as well.
Okay.
Like, you know, patience wise, you know, and that kind of factors into being a guard as well. So. Yeah.
And between you and Tay Brooks, I mean, two of the better, offensive guards in the entire state. I'm just talking a bit about the bond that the two of you have, and just the offensive line in general, because I've heard it's often a brotherhood.
Oh yeah, it's a real brotherhood. I mean, we see each other every day. I mean, we stick by each other. You know, we got each other's back, and it's a beautiful thing to see. Like at first, it was kind of like kind of iffy. But then we started developing it kind of quickly. So I was like, all right, I think there's something special coming up on this offensive line. And then, just those are like my brothers. So yeah.
And then once your time here at Allen's done, you're going to head just a few hours north to begin your college career at Oklahoma. I'm just kind of thinking back to when you were making that decision. What contributed to your decision to commit to Oklahoma?
Relationships. I mean, right now, just the Allen greats that went through, that are going through it right now. Just like my brother currently enrolls there, and my grandpa got his PhD up there. They keep on saying it's a great place, and I take their word for it. I've been there at least 20 times, and it's been to the point where I know it was like I know where to go on campus. So it's kind of like so I knew it was a special choice, and also when I was at the State Fair for the OU Texas game, when they lost by 3 points, that kind of hurt me. So that's how I knew I made the right decision. Because I even though I wasn't playing, I was still like, I was just like, it kind of hurt because I was like, wow, like my team just lost. So yeah.
And you got to be pretty happy with how the weekend went for those boys, then, huh?
I did, yeah. I was pretty happy. So yeah.
And obviously, before you get up to Norman, you got some business to finish here as you guys are in pursuit of another state championship. Next up Saturday, right back out in Waco against Midway. Just what do you guys know about what Midway has in store, and just kind of some preliminary thoughts on that matchup?
I know they're going to play hard. I know they're a well-coached team, very well-coached team, and we're just we're definitely not going to overlook this game, just like any other playoff game. But we've been through this before, and I'm not gonna. And our mission is plain and simple. We're going to get to the next round. But we're trying to get to the next round. But just like otherwise, they're a good team. Really good team. It's going to be a challenge, but I think we got it.
Awesome. That's all I got for you, EJ. Hey, should be a fun one on Saturday. That's Saturday at 2 o'clock out at McLean Stadium in Waco, the state quarterfinals between Allen and Waco Midway. EJ, thank you for taking the time to chat with us, and good luck to y'all this week.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks again to EJ Ndoma-Ogar out of Allen for taking the time to chat for our Student Athlete Spotlight. And now we have, let's shift gears to some 5A talk. We have swapped in Brian Murphy in place of Devin Hassan. So let's talk some 5A, let's talk some 4A. Let's start with 4A because of the games that you had on your docket last week. Certainly the one that I think got the blood pumping a little bit more than usual leading up to it was Celina and Argyle.
Well, look how bummed he still is. You can see it on his face. Still bumming.
Let's just talk about, first off, just the build-up to this game, because Celina took a very unorthodox approach to this one. Hey, you did your feature on Celina time and all that, and how Celina raises its game in the playoffs, and that's one thing. But to take the number one team in the state, a team that had already handed them a 40-point loss or something to that tune earlier.
3 weeks before.
Yeah. To tell them that your guys aren't ready for the way we play football during the playoffs here in Celina, something to that tune. Definitely had some folks over in the Denton County side of things maybe kind of brushing that off and like, oh yeah, okay, Celina, let's see what you got. But
so I tweeted out the link to my story earlier this week. I did a story on it last year, Celina time, and they just ramp up their play in the playoffs. So I met with them again. They beat Stephenville, so why not? Celina is upsetting some folks after a down year, regular season. They entered the playoffs just getting pummeled by Argyle. That game, it looked like Argyle kind of took their foot off the gas, could have beat them by even more. Yeah. It was a 60-point game at one point. And then I meet with Coach Elliott and some of those guys, and Noah Ross, some of the key players for Celina. And, I'm like, so what happens in the playoffs? Why do y'all just take it to another level? What is it out here in the water in Celina? And then I found out that Celina and Argyle, prior to last Friday, they never played each other in the playoffs, which is interesting. They're fierce rivals. Over the last 20 years or so, 15, 20 years, played each other almost every regular season, whether it's a district game or not. And then, Coach Elliott, he had some interesting words to tell me about this. He knew we were on the record and all that fun stuff. And I don't know if he did it on purpose.
You're kind of thinking to yourself, like, are you supposed to be saying this to me?
While he was saying it, it didn't feel, abnormal or outlandish or anything. I was like, okay, he knows how his team plays in the playoffs. And for context, I don't have the exact quote. I can pull it up, but something along the lines of Argyle doesn't understand how Celina plays in the playoffs. And I tweeted that quote along with.
Yeah, it was Argyle doesn't understand how we play in the playoffs.
Yeah, and so that was just a small tidbit of a longer quote talking about, and I'm paraphrasing here, how Argyle hasn't improved since they played each other 3.5 weeks ago. They're doing the same old stuff. Celina, on the other hand, they're getting better. They've tweaked some things. They've made some changes. They've had 2 big playoff wins. And so, I put more of that in the story. And, some people around Denton County, they got a hold of it. Some people around Argyle got a hold of it. I'm good buddies with a couple of the guys on the Argyle radio crew.
Okay.
And so I talked to them before and during and after the game, at C.H. Collins. And they said once they saw that, they texted Coach Rogers instantly. And Coach Rogers at Argyle couldn't believe it. And he was like, okay. I even had some people from East Texas tweeting me back to the tweet and the quote and link that I tweeted out from Gilmer. If you remember when Celina played Gilmer in 2014 in the state semifinals, and Gilmer destroyed Celina, but that was one of the best Gilmer teams of all time. Someone tweeted out saying, hey, Coach Elliott's done something like this before, and I read the story, and it wasn't anything bad. He said something about their wide receivers at Gilmer, how they weren't that good or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Or as good as people make them out to be, and then Gilmer destroys them. And I don't know if it was a tactic to pump up his players knowing that they're the heavy underdogs in that game, but it almost worked. And when I saw Coach Elliott after the game, the first thing he said to me, he's hugging everyone. It's an emotional scene for Celina. They were winning literally almost the entire game up until the first few minutes of the game. They were down 3-0. The last 25 seconds of the game, they were down by 4. That's it. They took it to Argyle. Celina was the better team that night. Argyle was the better team overall. Obviously, I'm not going to deny that. But Celina was the better team that night, but just the better team ended up winning. And everyone's hugging Coach Elliott and everything after the game, and I finally get my chance. I go up to him. First thing he tells me is, man, you almost got me in trouble this week. And I said, it almost worked. And he laughed and he agreed with me. He poked the bear, and his guys came out firing. Man, this game, I had this weird feeling, and it was kind of reminiscent of the Dallas Cowboys Saints game last week. Going in, the Cowboys had no business beating the Saints, and they did. And, they took out their style of play, and Celina kind of did the same. They got the win to start the game. It was a really weird, windy, stormy day. There was an hour-and-a-half lightning delay at halftime, which made it even weirder. I don't know if that hurt Celina. I put that in my story. Celina had a 14-3 lead at halftime, and then just as the two teams were about to come back out for the second half, freaking lightning strikes, and then 20 minutes later, just a torrential downpour for about another 30 minutes, and then things didn't get started, and so Argyle outscored Celina 23-8 in the second half. I don't know if that had the weather delay had anything to do with it, or just halftime adjustments in general. It was a weird night, and I felt going in, I was like, man, I had a hunch this is going to be a weird game. Celina's going to play over their heads and give Argyle a run for their money, and they did. They did, and they should have beaten Argyle, man. It got to the point, I'm in the press box, and there's this kid from the Argyle, I guess their newspaper or something for their school, their school newspaper, and he's standing up and he's sweating bullets. He's so nervous, and I'm like, hey, I take it you're a student at Argyle, and he's like, yeah, it was probably kind of funny. I don't blame the guy, because I was actually a little nervous, deep down too. I was like, man, I have nothing invested in this game, emotionally or anything like that. And I was just like, man, this went down to the wire, but it came down to a 28-yard touchdown catch to win the game with 25 seconds left for Argyle. It was nuts.
It reminded me, you mentioned the Cowboys-Saints analogy. It reminded me when I was the 2011 NBA Finals between the Mavs and the Heat, when after Game 2 or Game 3, when Jason Terry was calling out LeBron, saying like, oh, okay, well, let's see if he can, see if he can guard me, and him, poking the bear, calling out the best player in the world at the time.
And then in Game 5, Jason Terry went off.
And Jason Terry just kept kept on getting the better of them, and it just shocked everybody. And I don't know, that kind of had some flashbacks to that moment when, And
DeMarcus Lawrence with the Cowboys did the same thing. He said something along the lines, if you just hit him in the mouth, make him uncomfortable, blah, 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 you're poking the bear, and it's working. Granted, Celina didn't win the game, but it was a much better result than 3 weeks ago when they got absolutely destroyed. They weren't even in that game at all. But, Celina made some changes. They moved Noah Ross, their star wide receiver. He was a quarterback last year. It tells you what kind of an athlete he is. They moved him to defensive back also. So not only did he have a big game offensively, he scored a touchdown, he had a 2-point conversion, but he was also one of the key players in the secondary. Coach Elliott told me, all those big plays Argyle was getting against us, a few weeks ago, that's not going to happen. We've corrected that. We've got athletes in the secondary to combat that. And, I just wasn't that impressed with Argyle. I mean, they have a stud running back in Tito Bryce. He's a bruiser. I think he had like 32 carries or something like that. He had a really impressive touchdown run. But, man, Celina, they were stuffing him. Yeah. They were stuffing him. They forced plenty of punts. I think Argyle punted 3 times in the first half. It was an odd game. It was a weird game. It was only fitting that there was a weather delay right in the middle.
So you're taking La Vega?
I actually am. Yeah. I am picking La Vega. I think, the La Vega scouts were all around me. In the press box, I was talking to them a little bit, and I don't know. Argyle barely beat La Vega the first time, just based off of obviously I wasn't at that game, but I was talking to the La Vega scouts, and I did some research and stuff, and Argyle had to come back and win that game. There was a lightning delay in that game. They looked kind of lackluster against Celina. I think La Vega's going to beat them, but that's a different conversation.
Let's talk some Frisco ISD to round this out. And where do you want to start, Brian? Reedy or Lone Star?
I was disappointed with Lone Star. After 2 really impressive playoff wins over Legacy and Lufkin, you're kind of on that hype train. Like, okay, Lone Star, they've got some things figured out. On the offensive side of the ball and other aspects, we knew the defense was good, and then they just laid an egg, man. They scored first on John Tyler, and I was like, okay, 7-0. It came 2 possessions after another blocked field goal by Trey Taylor. He's got like 27 of those this year. It seems like he blocks a field goal every game. Really special player. He will be missed at Lone Star. He broke out the team huddle afterwards. It was an emotional scene for Lone Star. But after that, they just had no answer for John Tyler. I'm not sure if John Tyler is the better team. If they play 10 times, I think Lone Star wins 7 of them. But they were just the better team that day, and they really took it to them and outscored them 34-6 after Lone Star took the early lead. It was really disappointing. I thought Lone Star was going to really come out and.
What was John Tyler able to do so effectively against them that it feels like, because that's far and away a season high in points allowed by Lone Star.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Up until that point, the most points Lone Star had given up in a game was to the Colony, and they lost that game 21-14, and then John Tyler somehow cracks his code of, all right, we're putting up 30 plus on Lone Star. They were able to run the ball. They had a few different guys. They kept alternating running the football. They had 3 different guys score a rushing touchdown. They had this big receiver, 6'2" receiver. I blank you on his name. I can pull it up here in a sec. But he was a monster, number 13. He was causing fits. And their quarterback, he was small. John Tyler's quarterback was small, a little 5'9" guy, but one of those shifty guys. You got to worry about him scrambling for 15 yards on 3rd down, which he did a couple times. And they just made plays when they had to.
Meanwhile, a much different result for Reedy, which continues its dream playoff run. And hey, Brian, credit where credit's due, man. You called it that Reedy was going to lay waste to Burleson Centennial during our Game of the Week podcast. And when you live and die by the hot takes, sometimes we're gonna maybe look at you a little side eye when you keep making bold proclamation after bold proclamation. But sure enough, buddy,
they're not that crazy.
This one hit for you.
I mean, I'm not wrong that much of the time. But I did say this is when we flash back to last week when I'm saying, hey, Reedy's going to win this game by 30. Albeit they didn't win by 30, they won by 27.
It's
close enough.
They essentially did.
They beat them pretty good. They forced a lot of turnovers in that game. And, man, we finally get the matchup we've been waiting for since, the early of the regular season.
When we knew that Reedy had a chance to be something special.
Yeah, and then especially after they beat Lovejoy, the way they beat Lovejoy, then it was like, okay, 4th round is when Reedy and Aledo could be paired against each other, and it's finally here. I don't know if we want to talk too much about that game now, or we'll.
That later on.
Okay, so a little teaser for you guys, but yeah, it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, and that'll.
You get to check out Pennington Field too.
Yeah, in Bedford. I never really go.
Never covered a game there.
No, I never really got to that neck of the woods.
You like hot dogs?
I'm used to that.
They got plenty from the press box for you.
Is that all it is? Just hot dogs?
Popcorn, I think.
Yeah. You know, I base my
He covers out of Frisco ISD, so it's,
and granted, the Star is an amazing place to cover a game, watch a game. I'm assuming play in a game. Like you don't have to worry about the weather. It's so nice. You're playing where the Cowboys literally practice, but there's just no food in the press box. And I don't know who's to blame, but they're in Toyota Stadium. You know, two nice venues, and there's just not even a drink, not even drinks in the press box. And that's my main thing with press boxes. I don't care if it's tiny. If there's food, I'm all for it.
Seems like in a lot of these playoff games, when you get out to like stadiums that aren't high school stadiums and stuff, the food kind of vanishes.
Yeah, even in the regular season.
I haven't had food at my last couple games either.
It's depressing. Yeah, I went to John Kincaid Stadium though for Lone Star. Out there in South Dallas. Never been out there before. Terrific barbecue spread, and I'm here for all of that. I'll go back. Any chance I get. So
McLean Stadium out of Baylor had a giant like ice box that had like ice cream sandwiches and popsicles and stuff in there. So a change of pace for my press box diet. And yeah, that will do it for this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Wednesday to preview Allen and Waco Midway, Reedy and Aledo, and a little bit more. Talk some basketball as well. And yeah, that'll do it, folks. Hey, Justin, Brian, as well as Devin Hassan. Appreciate everybody for tagging along. Folks, you enjoy your week, and we will talk to y'all later. Thanks for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast, brought to you by Performance Food Group. They deliver more than 150,000 food and related products to customers all across the country. Their McKinney office is currently hiring Class A CDL drivers, order selectors, and many other entry and part-time positions. For more information, you can visit their website at pfgc.com/careers, or you can call 214-491-3130. That is Performance Food Group, located in McKinney at 500 Metro Park Drive.